Hi everybody, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Welcome to White Columns for the second of 3 talks on and around this amazing exhibition, Matta-Clark, New York City Graffiti Archive, 1972 to 1973. It was co-curated by Roger Jessamyn, Beyond the Streets in Los Angeles, and Jessamyn Fiore of the Matta-Clark estate, who's going to moderate tonight's conversation. Before I just hand over to Jessamyn, I just wanted to, if you're not aware, tomorrow at 5 o'clock, so that's Saturday at 5 p.m., not 6 p.m., we have the third panel discussion, which is entitled Beauty in the Street, and it has a subtitle, New York City Graffiti, Fashion, Music, and Culture. And it's going to be a conversation between Charmin 65, Staff 161, Henry 161, and it's going to be moderated by Claude. And then following the conversation, we're going to have a book signing with many of the writers who are present tonight and others who are also involved in this project and whose work is represented both in the exhibition and the book that accompanies it. With further ado, I'll hand over to Jessamyn, and she'll introduce tonight's panelists.
Yeah, we're waiting. I think we're still waiting on Wicked Gary. Yeah.
Oh, is that? We can
Yeah, but we'll start. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for coming out tonight to White Columns and this special exhibition. So, as Matthew mentioned, I run the estate of Matta-Clark with my mother, Jane Crawford, who is the artist's widow. So this is work that I know very well, but I also grew up with it. It's family. This particular exhibition has been revelatory in so many ways, and I think we're going to dig into it. But, Gordon took over 2,000 photographs of early New York City graffiti, and this was something that he started, sort of doing these exploratory trips, particularly beginning in the South Bronx. And he did his first series of building cuts, which is what he's best known for in the South Bronx. But he started seeing this work, and he was curious about it, and he just took photo after photo after photo after photo. And then some of the works in the other room there, you can see what he did with those photos eventually was he printed them and then he hand painted them, he airbrushed them. So it was almost like he was really trying to learn this. So we'll dig into all the ins and outs of that. But I just want to say I am really thrilled because to be able to speak tonight with Moses, that's Sal 161, and then COCO 144, and Wicked Gary from the Ex-Bandits. It's been incredible for me. I've grown up with these photographs, but to meet the artists behind them and the artists a part of this time through this exhibition has been incredibly inspiring. So for tonight's conversation, I'm really interested in this idea of New York City in the early 1970s. And there were so many crises going on in the city at that time. Not only did it actually go bankrupt in 1975, but there was a failure in architecture, there was a failure in city planning, and the artists in this show and Matta-Clark were responding to that. And really started, this art movement was using the city as material, was in and of the city. So I want to sort of play out those stories, but find those overlaps then with also Matta-Clark and what his cohort of artists were doing down in Soho, the Lower East Side. But we have a really good geographical representation here because we have Wicked Gary represented Brooklyn and what was going on there, COCO, Washington Heights, and that scene, and then Moses, Upper West Side. So with Matta-Clark, that's downtown. So I think it's going to be interesting to play out what was happening in the city and how these connections started to be made. So, thank you. So to begin, I think if you don't mind, I might start just with each of you and how did you begin writing? Like, what was this impetus to go out and start putting your name on places? We start, Gary, do you want to kick us off?
Okay, thank you. When I first started, I was looking for a way to, I guess, build on my concept of who I was and establish some sort of personality. You know, as a teenager, I didn't have money, you know, I didn't have a job. I didn't have much quote-unquote purpose, and, you know, I kept seeing these commercials, be all you can be, and, you know, I wasn't joining the Marines, so I was like, okay, I still got to figure something out that's going to help me be more of who I am, what I'm about. And I was around a bunch of cats who were all about their nicknames, and, you know, I think we grew up in an area where people were trying to be super cool this, or super that, or kings, or, you know, feel themselves a little bit more. And I was one of those cats who did the same. You know, I started out, I wanted to be super soul. You know, I thought soul was hip at the time, and soul was good. But then one day, you know, a friend of mine reminded me how I got my nickname, actually gave me the nickname Wicked, and it stuck. And I was like, yeah, that worked for me. Okay, and I kept it.
That's great. And COCO?
Thanks again to everyone that's here. I appreciate your presence. Yeah, it was about I was in junior high school, 13, 14. I feel it was a combination of a lot of things that made me a writer. When I came to the 60s and 70s, there was a lot of social change going on. I caught the tail end of the hippie movement. There was, you know, civil rights. You know, either consciously or unconsciously, I practice protesting, you know, in my own way. Also, being a kid, you know, what do you do when you're a teenager? You're gonna, like, you defy everything you possibly defy. When I saw writers up in the Heights, you know, like Taki and Fiore, and Julio 204, I don't know, there was something there that I connected to. You know, it was just like, I can't put my finger on it. I sort of put my finger on it now, but I was attracted to it. It was like a magnetic pull. Again, like, you know, it's you're a kid, you're a teenager, you're thinking of identity, and I believe that everyone that went out there, or everyone in the world, was trying to express themselves one way or another. This was my vehicle, you know, the streets and the trains. So, and I was rebellious too. As quiet and nice I can look like right now. I was a rebellious kid, you know, and I wanted to leave my mark.
Yeah.
And so this is what I gravitated to.
I love that it's literally leaving a mark, though. You know, I think that's what's so, like, amazing about this art movement, is that it was literally leaving a mark, leaving your name in the city, in the architecture. And, you know, with the work of Gordon Matta-Clark, that's what he was interested in too, because he felt people were too timid in their architecture. You know, they were too timid in, you know, just sort of taking what's been given, even when it's no longer serving its purpose. Like, so much of the city at that point was failing people and failing the communities. And I do think when he saw these early, you know, writings, it was like, this is great. This is, you know, these young people are putting their name on their city and saying, I'm here. And I think to him, that's what the inspiration was in a lot of ways. So,
And it was sort of like, well, not sort of like, I feel that it was, we were making public property our property, in the sense that we put our mark on it, we put our name at that space.
yeah. Yeah. And then Moses, for you, was it similar when you were Were you seeing the works, like the other artists making their mark, and you kind of wanted to add to the conversation, or how did you come to it?
Well, yes, that's true. Well, first of all, I want to say thank you, Jessamyn, for this talk, and also to Roger and to White Columns for putting together this historic exhibition of our early graffiti together with Matta-Clark's work that he took the photographs. I think that this is an incredibly important show, so I'm really happy to be part of it and to participate and contribute to it. Well, I grew up on the Upper West Side, and it was like the South Bronx, It was burnt out buildings, it was urban decay, there was violent street gangs, there was hard drugs, and I didn't want to be a part of any of that. I guess I like to draw and things, so I wanted to be creative. And then the first time I saw a train with a tag on it, I remember like it was yesterday, it was a Stitch, big tag on the side of a car, and it was just like, amazing. It was like, this is something that I want to get involved with, and that was sort of like the inspiration to come up with something, come up with a name, and start tagging and find out about it through other people who were doing it, where's the yard, and be part of this. So for me, it was a very positive way to express myself, even though society frowned upon this activity. But for myself, it was something very empowering to sort of, to make myself visible and to feel present and seen, where I felt very invisible where I was, because, me and my friends, we just blended into the role, so to speak.
No, I think that's interesting, and also, again, linking it to Gordon, he was accused of vandalism all the time with his work, and I think that was when he was seeing, the early graffiti, and everyone was just, really down on it, which you can see in the articles here. I think it's interesting to look at the news articles at the time, and it was just, oh, this is another symptom of the city falling apart, rather than, whereas he saw it as, no, this is a positive thing, right? This isn't vandalism. This is the start of something new. I think what I've learned through this process and through working with Roger and all of you is what blows me away then is that you were young teenagers and you kind of started self-organizing and connecting with one another and building affiliations, which I think is pretty amazing, and pretty amazing considering across the geography of the city too. And I know the trains are really part of that. But like when I read the story of the ex-vandals, I thought that was fascinating. If you don't mind telling it a bit of how it was like, okay, here are all these different writers in Brooklyn, but then how did you come together to become something bigger than just you as individuals doing things?
Okay, well, when Dino and I first mentioned the idea, pretty much I hung out with a bunch of writers, at school at Erasmus Hall in Brooklyn. And we were all pretty popular in our own neighborhoods. And he looked up and said one day, hey, can you imagine had we all been writing the same name, what the impact of that would be in terms of our popularity? And we all just looked at each other like, yeah, that's pretty cool, because we were really, really well known. And so we talked about it for a bit, and then Friday afternoon, we decided to go to Dino Norris' house for a meeting after school. Ex-vandals didn't exist. We sat there and sussed it through, thought of names that we liked, purpose, where we were going to be, how we were going to represent. By the time we walked out of the building, the ex-vandals were born. We played around with a bunch of different names. Vanguards were some of our friends who lived in Brownsville, sort of, not Fort Greene, but that Sky area. And there were some of our friends, but they were basically a gang that had writers in it. We didn't want anything to do with the gang part, but we liked the power that the band had. So we wanted to stick with that for a little bit. And when it came to being, somebody mentioned vandals, so we're vandals, because we're always tearing stuff up. we liked it, and then that was the end of it. So somebody said, yeah, but we also experienced. And then somebody was like, yeah, but we're gonna get caught trying to write that. That's way too long. Somebody was said, okay, well, let's shorten it. Let's just make it X grams. So that's how the name was formed. We left that day. We said, let's give them a little something to think about. And we came up with WBYA. And everybody's like, what's WBYA? I was like, we'll bust your ass. And that was basically because we were pretty much kings of our neighborhood. We knew nobody could top us if we did this properly. So we put that out in secret. And then we went back to our respective neighborhoods. And like I said, Friday afternoon was after school. X-Rambles didn't exist. Monday morning, when you came out or you saw it everywhere, it was X-Rambles and nobody knew what it was. And it just went ballistic after that. But the networking was because when we went back to our own homes, everybody went to different neighborhoods. And then we all took a pledge to basically give up our individual names and only write the crew name and not tell anybody who our identities were, and that helped the mystique of the organization and the fact that nobody knew who we were or what we were at the time.
Effective technique. That's amazing. And then COCO, I know there was the scene where you were, and I was reading about, it was right at the corner too in the South Bronx, but people were already starting to connect. And then just sort of the next step, I think is really interesting, then the organization of the UGA, which happened with Hugo Martinez, I guess, coming around. You said you met him too, Moses.
Yeah, I met him early on before.
Early on. So he was just going around just looking for writers.
Right.
But you had already been connected with a group where you were already writing with a number of other artists. How did that sort of...
I had my writing partners, which
Yeah.
was 10144 and 877. It was in late October of 72 that actually Henry, 161, had mentioned to me there was this guy going around. Everybody thought he was a cop or an undercover. And that he was organizing writers to go down to City College to paint on a classroom wall. So, yeah, it was a group of us. It was, Henry K. 161, Stitch, Snake 1, Stitch 1, some of the writers down from 135th Street, Jake 135, Frankie 135. It was a number. It must have been like 20 writers.
That's a lot.
Yeah. And so this classroom in City College, which we didn't have the physical address, we sort of knew where it was, but there wasn't. We weren't told. We didn't know it was that it was going to be an Eisner Ball. For some reason or another, there's something about spray paint. The smell, travels. And so that's how we found this classroom that was just, covered with brown construction paper, and guys were already going at it. So that was late October 72. I don't know, about a couple of weeks after that, we had these write-ups. Peter Schultz, Michelle Gorod, who wrote something in the Times. It was just like we got all this coverage. Daily News, the Post. It just went bananas.
So it's like really visible.
Yeah, it was
like a lot of
so,
people went through.
Yeah, it was like we were getting the recognition we wanted to get on the trains, but
Wow.
yeah, multiplied by 100.
Things went to another level once you made the paper or once he made the paper.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, as a writer, we were looking at papers when we saw the articles that came out on Tacky. It was like, when are we going to come out? When is somebody going to get us on the train? Or something like that. But it wasn't happening. And it's not, that identity crisis that almost everybody goes through and stuff.
Right.
And, I mean, the vandal part, or it being I love breaking the law. I loved breaking the law at that time. I don't break the law anymore, but I loved breaking the law. There was this adrenaline of going in the trains and riding on the streets and the whole thing, and it's just like, and getting away with it, you know, which was like, it was great. It was great. I feel like every writer has this virus, and we still have it, and I still feel like going out. But I think I'm getting off the subject.
But so then what was it like then? I mean, because obviously that project and the success of that led to the UGA kind of setting up a space, right? And inviting and that's a big transition, going from you're on the trains, you're doing this, you know, you're breaking the law, to suddenly you're in a gallery or a space.
Well, we
inside.
were invited to do the backdrop for Twilight Far in March of 1973. And I think we did 7 performances or something like that. It was aggravating a lot of the dancers because it was just like, it was just like, yeah. I think some of the dancers got kind of teed off also, because at the first performance, we all went out and were like holding hands, and then we got standing ovation, and we were spraying paint, and the lights were hitting on it. It was just something, it was like, I felt like I made it. I could die tomorrow, I made it. From there, we did a couple of murals, and that went over to 3 murals. Bombers also. Yeah, we did a number of things. We did programs, we did Good Morning New York, we did PBS, we got a lot of coverage. So it just kept on climbing. And then I wasn't part of the organization during the summer because I became dad when I was 16, so there was things that I had to attend to. But I came back to the group in time to participate in the Brits and Gallery show in September of 1973.
Right, and that was like a watershed moment.
Yeah, that was
Yeah.
just kept on.
I mean, I think it's fascinating though, this idea then of, I mean, the Twilight Clark performance, that's pretty visionary to include the artists in that way. But bringing the work off the streets onto canvases, that's definitely a choice, you know? And I think what's fascinating, just again, sort of going into these overlapping worlds, right? So Gordon Matta-Clark and his group down in Soho, they started an artist-run space called 112 Green Street, at 112 Green Street. And at the time, it was one of these former factory buildings. There had been a rag picking factory in the ground floor that moved out. And so these artists, they moved in. And it was really sort of communal and anarchic, that kind of self-organized way where, you know, rather than having a curator go, oh, you're going to do this or this, they self-organized, and it would be like, okay, I'm going to make a sculpture over there, and it'll stay up however long, and then you can go do your thing. And a lot of the works were site-specific and ephemeral. It had performance. It was really experimental. And Gordon used it as a base to experiment. But he had this thing because he wanted to use the city itself as material, and he wanted to bring people's attention to what was happening, like particularly in the South Bronx, because he had just come, you know, graduating from Cornell with a degree in architecture, where he, you know, was taught, like, particularly, you know, sort of the grades of modernist architecture, but what he saw is that so much of that was just failing people. And these grand plans were failing people, and the housing was failing people. And so he wanted to draw attention to those failures, and also draw attention to, like, you know, the failure of architects or city planners to work with the community and with the people and actually have their voices involved, right? So it was in '72 when he started, you know, walking around and preparing for his first solo show at 112 Green Street, which had the Bronx floor cuts. But that's when he started taking all the graffiti photographs. And he was doing that into the spring of '73 then. And I just think it's fascinating, this question of how does this work from the subways, from the walls, how does it move into a gallery space, right? And that this question was being asked by UGA on the one hand and moving the work to canvas and sort of building a relationship with those artists. And then with Gordon, he was experimenting with this question too. And, I just think it's interesting that this was kind of in the air at that moment, and I know Moses, then we talked about, because you were involved with another space that opened then called NOGA, and that was up in the Upper West Side, right? And that was a little different because I know it opened a little later in '74, I believe, by Jack Pelsinger, who also had worked with the UGA.
Jack actually, while we were doing the work at the Joffrey Ballet, he was good friends with Herb Makedoll. So it was through Herb Makedoll it was through Herb Makedoll that he introduced it to Jack. Actually, Jack took that video.
Oh, wow.
He did it both he did it with Michael Lawrence, but most of it was done by Jack.
Right.
And there wasn't supposed to be any cameras during the performance, so they did it on the sneak. Otherwise, we wouldn't have to.
Yeah, no, it's great they did that.
But it was Jack. He had a studio space on 27th Street between 6th and 7th, like right up the block of where FIT is. And he opened up the doors for us to go in there and paint. They butted heads with Mr. Martinez, and I think it was just time to move on. So during the summer of '73, that's when UGA was able to acquire a space on 29 Jamel Place on 168th Street off Amsterdam Avenue. And at that time, the city was going through its thing, and we got 10,000 square feet for $1 a month.
Wow, that's amazing. But that's that moment, isn't it? I mean, it really is like these spaces were just, because I think Nova was similar too, right? It was a former...
Yeah, it was a storefront on Columbus Avenue between 88th Street and 89th Street, and it was, these abandoned buildings, but with the storefront, he was able to get the storefront and then invite any writer who's welcome, which was great. I thought it was that would be my concept. It's like, hey, we invented this stuff, right? I mean, not everybody everybody does a different creative level, but everybody's welcome. And so it was really gave me an opportunity to start doing graffiti on canvas, and I sold my first painting was through Nova. This is big spray painted piece that I did. I sold it to an architect, and that was really empowering for me. It's like, wow, this can really happen. I mean, as a kid, you're like, okay, the whole system's against us, but so then that kind of opened my eyes more about possibilities of art, and also there was an organization called Garden Riverside, and they were teaching photography. So they would give kids cameras and film, and go out shooting, and then we would develop it in the dark room. So that was how some of the photographs that are in the book that I took, the ones I took, they're in the NOGA book. And I'm just going to show the book because I think it's important that NOGA was an important organization. So I just want to know this exists, and that Beyond the Streets has it, and so it really tells you a lot of what was going on at that time. But aside from about what you're saying, in terms of art being in museums or in galleries, I always thought that the art should be outside, like murals in plazas and things like that. Bring it out to the public, because as a kid, I didn't feel welcome in those spaces, or even aware of those spaces for that matter. So to bring it to the public, I think was the idea that is something that's very powerful, and I think really resonates when people see work and they really connect to it. So,
how do you, Gary and Coco, how do you feel about that? I mean, again, just on this question of sort of the transition of the work from streets into a gallery space. I mean, it's. I feel like there's still tension there even today.
Well, you got to remember it was all brand new. Nobody had done this before, so there's tension in that because of the unknown factor. Period. But I will say UGA was the first entity to actually sell graffiti on canvas, which helped start it and kicked it off, to the art world. There were other things that happened after that, which also were catalysts that really pushed it forward. But again, that was part of the relationship with the press and some of the people who fell in love with it, the movement at the time, were important people who had name recognition and places where they had influence, like the New York Times. So when articles would come out, that would give us a bump and would raise our head up above the mud a little bit, And it also would push the guys because it was like, hey, that felt pretty good, let's go get some more of that. So it became a love thing, and especially as it got more popular. The guys, were doing it because they enjoyed what was going on. There was a lot of discovery, self-awareness in terms of us painting what we were feeling, expressing ourselves, finding our own identities, also dealing with the camaraderie that we had among the other writers, and behind that, the friendships grew, the networks grew, and by that happening, we also started to see the movement grow because now we're making more connections. We're getting into places we've never had access to before, like museums, like galleries. We're meeting people who can open doors and make things happen. And eventually some of that stuff did work. People like Hugo were visionaries in terms of putting us together, and the guys, with Noga. But I think those three organizations were catalysts to, really pushing things forward to another level, because it became an organization that had a purpose to get this done and to make these expressions of what we see on these walls today. It was a lovely time because it was a time of learning. Nobody had ever done this before, so it was all brand new to us. So it was amazing to us, confusing and crazy to the public who felt that they were under attack, which they were. But it was a wonderful thing because the thing that grew out of it was all these wonderful friendships. And, when you're around some of the most talented people in the city at the time, and they're vibing off of each other, it can be a really beautiful thing to see what comes out of those moments. And fortunately, we were there for a bunch of them.
That's beautiful.
I also feel, I want to add that, the majority of us, I've read that these kids from the ghettos, and I got to buff that out. The majority of us were working class kids. We came from working class families. Okay, we weren't underprivileged. Okay, they could have been a couple, but being an artist is not a working class goal. It was more like, my parents' plans for me were like, finish high school and get a good job, whatever the job was. So I felt that we also broke this barrier, or we did break a barrier, a creative barrier that now is still being practiced for like 50 years plus, and it's global. So, I just wanted to add that.
Yeah, that's true. That's really true. I think again, with what you're describing, going back to these sort of resonances, I do think about, Gordon and his friends. They were obviously a bit older. He was in his late 20s when he was doing this, but it was resonating with him. But they were also kind of having that, looking back on it, it's really like a sort of beautiful, idealistic moment that was happening in the 70s, even amidst this crisis, because also I think obviously with the transition onto canvas and then, and being able to sell and sort of building a value, but it was the same with the work he was making his friend. It wasn't sellable, it wasn't commercial. It was making work for work's sake in that moment. And really connecting with the city in like a visceral way. And I guess I just want to ask, because, you know, talking about this moment, which you did so beautifully, what was it like for you then to see these photographs? Because these photographs, we didn't realize how special it was that he took all these photographs at this moment, 72, 73. It wasn't until Roger really got in touch with my mother, and because he had seen, you know, one of Gordon's graffiti photographs, and he started thinking, like, are there any more photos that he took? Are there any more negatives? You know, even if he didn't print them. And then my mom was like, yeah, he took thousands. And, you know, and so it's been a really amazing journey with this show to scan all those negatives and to print them. But I know it's, you know, I was so surprised the first time I learned that nobody else was taking photographs like this, and particularly so much at that moment. So
Yeah, I mean, for me, when I saw the photo that he took of my piece, which is, it's, you know, letters are alternating colors. Like one is green, the other one is white, and then green and white. And then the background was chrome. And the idea was that when it was, you know, he did this because when the train was moving, the reflection of the light would like have the letters bouncing. And then with the other piece, the little canvas I had, I noticed, I said, wait a minute, this is the same technique I used on the train. It's like yellow and red for red and then yellow.
yeah,
The same type of idea of this thing that was moving. You know what I mean? It wasn't a static artwork. It was something that was in motion. But to see these photographs of his that I would never, you know, in a million years, I remember some of these pieces.
so it brought it back.
Yeah,
Like the thinking and the
Super Bowl
process.
223. I remember seeing that.
There weren't many of us that were taking photographs of the work. We had Instamatic cameras. And this was discussed last night.
Yeah,
Roger had
yeah.
mentioned it. But, yeah, I mean, there's a reference here. We have a reference to look at things. And I could say that over 90% of the photographs that are here in the trains that you know, that are the photographs of the trains, I remember where I was at when I first saw that piece. Yeah. I've been taking it on a ginkgo. But yeah, it's like one of those moments that I can transport myself and remember where I was at when I saw that train. You know, and you know, thank God for Gordon that he was able to
let me say something.
yes.
We had a bunch of folks, thankfully, that were out photographing graffiti. I won't say a bunch, but we had some prominent names. You know, you guys know them all. So I'm not going to run through them. But I want to say there's a difference between Gordon because he was also an artist. Most of the other photographers were basically just photographing, and they were only capturing the art. Gordon was an artist also. So that separated him from the other photographers and also made him see it from a different perspective, which is one reason why that background was special, because when you see the blows up of the pictures that he took, and then he goes behind that and hand paints that, trying to basically learn the techniques and the styles and the mediums. So he's in it at another level. So the stuff that he took is amazing to see all the different things that he saw.
And he had a chance to live in our shoes. So
Yeah, and he was definitely emulating and trying to figure out what it was we were doing and how we were doing it, what the techniques and everything was about it. So he was a lot deeper than a lot of photographers, and I just wanted to state that because I think people take that for granted, and they don't realize that there's a different aspect of just being a photographer, but being an artist and a photographer, that it adds to what you're doing in terms of the work.
Yeah. No, I do. I feel like the more time I spend in this exhibition and also talking with you all and the other artists, it's like there's such a deep connection there, and it is an artist to artist connection, you know? And You know, and I can't help but think, like, God, if he was here, I would love to hear that conversation, you know, of, you know, what you, because, I mean, you can see he was trying to make the connection, figure out what was going on, figure out the language, because I think he could see that there's a conversation happening, which you see when you look at all these photographs, you start to see that emerge.
Participated in the conversation.
Yeah.
And you did a good job.
Amazing. Well, I do want to give time to open it up to some more, you know, questions and comments too. I don't know how we're doing on time. Yeah, you wanted to say something earlier, and I'm so sorry. I just didn't want to stop the flow, but I saw you had your, I want to jump in.
To make one comment when you were talking.
Oh, okay.
Can I,
Yeah. Do you want the mic?
when you guys were talking about how exciting it was to be able to paint on canvas, and I'm one of these people that I knew how to draw when I was young, and I wanted to go to art design and all that. I ended up in Evander, but I wanted to go to art school. So the idea of painting on canvas was very exciting. You were saying it was like we were a bunch of knuckleheads, didn't know what we were doing. At the time, yes, I didn't know what I was doing. He didn't know what he was doing. We did it because it was fun. And I wanted to make that point. And then with you and Noga,
No, that was his word.
We'll go back.
oh, well, okay, back to you, okay, and back to him. We did something I consider very special. And you didn't take credit. Like, you said you were away that summer. Yes, you were, but you were still the president of UGA.
I don't think I wasn't voted president of UG until 1974. So afterwards, after the races.
I'm talking before Razor. I was,
Wasn't it?
yeah,
Well,
because
it's
I was
not
vice
right
president.
anymore.
I know what I was doing. I wouldn't have been doing all that crap if I wasn't vice president. And I'll be honest with you.
What's scratching the game though?
Beating up on Flint to make him put up the lights and all that, I wouldn't have been me. I wouldn't have been in the middle of that phase 2 and stand Fandango if I wasn't vice president. So we were, I was covering you.
Thank God that you're around to remind me about things.
Now, back to you. When you speak about Noga,
Yeah.
always say Jack,
Oh, yeah, Jack Pelsinger,
Mike,
Michael Lawrence,
Libby French.
and French.
Always say those three because they busted their butts for you guys to make sure that happened. And that's what I went to say.
Oh,
You know what that book
yeah,
I said, you better say Libby French, you better say Michael Lawrence. I don't care if you don't say me, but you say that.
All right.
Okay?
Well, a bunch of guys from who were, I guess, I don't know, former UGA came through NOGA as well. It was Obama and COCO went through with phase 2 and a couple others. Stan 153 was part of NOGA. Ali came through. So there was a bunch of people coming through the space and, you know, energizing, you know, the whole atmosphere of what was going on. So yeah, and that's a perfect point. I thank you for correcting me. I'll take that in the spirit that you're giving is that Jack Pelsinger was the one who organized NOGA and got the space, and it was encouraging the kids to come in and paint on paper and you know, and then eventually on canvas. And Michael Lawrence was the one who took a lot of photographs of, you know, what was going on in the space as well. And Libby French was also helping in a more administrative and writing way. Paperwork and stuff like that. So, you know how it is. When there's an organization, there's people behind the scenes who are doing the work, and they should be recognized for their effort because NOGA made a big impact to me. because it motivated me to be to go on and do bigger and greater things. Because I went on and I studied architecture. I became an architect. I worked in a private firm designing schools for the Board of Education and public buildings. So it was really, it's like, wow, possibility just opened up for me for that. Because I know a lot of my friends and buddies who didn't make it. You know what I mean? They got caught up in the system, and they didn't, very few made it through. So yes, thank you to Bravo for bringing that up. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Coast TDS Graffiti artist, and I'm sitting here and I'm listening to these guys, and I love this because if it wasn't for this, I wouldn't have been doing what I was doing. I'm from the second generation. I started riding on the trains in 1981, and I've always looked up to these guys, and I'm looking and I'm listening, and I got chills because I can identify with the part when COCO was talking about how we were black sheep. We were the black sheep. And as I look back in retrospect, I think about it. I'm a graffiti vandal turned graffiti artist now. There's a big difference. And look at us now. I look back and I'm like, damn, I was a kid, being rebellious. That was a form of rebellion. They didn't allow us in galleries, But I was always an artist. Since I'm 7 years old, 8 years old, my dad gave me a little pad, and then I started writing graffiti on trains. I loved it. I was attracted to it. I look at this, and I remember seeing this when I was a kid. And I'm like, how do you like this now? We are one of the most sought-out art forms globally now. And it feels good to be looked at as a rebel, a vandal, or low class, ghetto kids. And it started with kids, and look at us now. We're all adults, and we're now doing panel discussions in art galleries, museums, Cornell University, all these, it's beautiful, man. It's a beautiful feeling, man. Thank you guys for starting this movement.
Oh my God.
Right on. Thank you. I always looked at the movement like, okay, we were some of the first writers, so I look at it like the Olympics, that like we lit the torch, and then, and then other people were carrying it, so there's 5 generations of that torch being carried. So, and it's big. It's big. It doesn't only belong to me. At one time, I used to get upset about things, and then I realized that this is big. Really, really. A little part of it comes to me because it's that big. So it's taking writers like you and writers from the next generations, from the 90s, from the 2000s, and to current writers now that keeps this movement,
Can I just say one last thing? So it's funny because I had a friend a while back, a long time ago, his name is Delta 2. He's still a friend of mine. And he brought me to a guy named Martin Wong, and I saw a couple of black books to him. And who knew that 40 plus years later that my stuff is now in the Martin Wong collection in the Museum of the City of New York. And then today, a good friend of mine, Christine, right over there, she's a teacher, art teacher, and researcher. She sent me a bunch of images, and I'm like, this piece is so old. She was in NYU. I'm part of what's the name of the guy's collection?
It's the 5 library at NYU. There's the artist.
My stuff is in NYU. I'm like, I would have never knew this. I'm like, if it wasn't for people like her that I met her, she's a TRT, she's a researcher, I would have never knew that my stuff is in NYU. It's crazy.
I just want to add real quick about the phenomenon of graffiti being global. Because when we were doing it, the way I thought of it, I thought, this is a New York thing. This is New York. This is me. I'm New York. This is it. And like anything else, when something has this spirit to it, people are attracted to it, and it just grows and it just spread around the world. And that was a very, like, wow, this is amazing that happened. Because I've never would have thought of that before. I don't know, Gary, how you feel about that?
Okay, I am fascinated that this has become something that they thought would hopefully only be a fad. Give them time, they'll grow out of it. We'll spend enough money on it, and once we wipe it away, they won't be able to do it again and it'll be gone forever. Instead, it has become a culture. It has over a 50-year history with many branches on the trees that have touched all of our yards. Okay. I also want to make a connection that I don't share much. Part of one of those main branches, and when you asked me earlier about the expansion of organizing with the X-Ramblers, one of the big moments of that organization was when I called Lonnie, which is phase 2, to make him president of the Uptown chapter. Basically, when I called Lonnie, I said, Lonnie knows who needs to be in, who's uptown. And once you get the man, everybody else will follow just because that's who he is and that's what it is. So that is a catalytic moment that pushed things to another level just to get Lonnie to be the head of X-Ramblers Uptown. And right behind that, I was just like, okay, we got everybody we need. Here they come. We don't have to ask. Lonnie knows. It's all good. But it was a pivotal moment in expansion and in also the fact that I didn't have to really hit the ground and go find everybody. Because everybody knew Lonnie, Lonnie knew everybody, and he also knew who the quality and who we were looking for in terms of membership and what the requirements were, you know, because we were only looking for the best of the best.
Again, I am amazed at the level of self-organization. Like, it really is incredible, these connections, and then that willingness to work together and expand and kind of all be a part of it. I mean, there's a collective nature in that seems so organic that I just think that's really rare. You know, for like generationally speaking, it's really special.
Between NOGA, UGA, and groups like the X-Ramblers, those are all catalysts for networking.
Right.
And I gotta share this with everybody here. The city of New York also did a good job of putting together a network. They used to call them clean teams. And basically what happened was, when you got busted, they would assign you to go clean up some stations with some other riders. Now, it was deemed as a punishment, but what it really ended up doing was forming new networks of guys who didn't know each other from different parts of the city, exchanging information, techniques, styles, information, like what time is that yard clear? How do you get in the fence over at so-and-so where the train layers are? So, had they thought they were punishing us, they were creating a brand new network because, okay, what you doing when you leave here and we finish cleaning? Let's go ahead. And whoever was sharing the information would take you to the new spot and show you how to get in and give you access. And now you got another 15, 20 people who know the same information. And you get clean teams every week in the subways. Put 7 of them during the course of the week. That's over 100 guys that you just helped train. So thank you, City of New York, for forming the clean teams, because it was a vehicle for networking and for growth, exchange of ideas, partnerships, and it was also another way all the cultures got together without seeing cultural differences, because we were all writers when we got together. You know, we weren't graffiti artists. You know, when we met each other, hey, what are you graffiti art? No, we were writers. That's what we still are. So
what it did, it broke down a lot of racial barriers because writers from all different.
we saw no colors.
Yeah,
Except for the color of the
Ethnic groups were, all ethnic groups were just like one, you know, so I just wanted to add that to that.
color that was most important was the color of your paint.
I wanted to add to what Gary had said, 2 things. True. Faze was president of the Bronx version of the X-Vandals, but there was this character that loved Jim some demon. His name was Stay High, my friend. And Stay High was pissed that they made Lonnie president. And guess what? Guess what Mr. Stay High did? He said, "Oh, really? Watch this." And he went ballistic.
Really? What did he do?
He just X-rambled every place. Everybody.
Even Graves was going, "What's wrong with Graves? What's he doing? I am the president." And Graves was like, "You were short." Wayne just blew that up. Even Dino Nod had to mention the fact that, what is up with Stay High? Everybody was like, what is up with Stay High?
It was a love affair.
It wasn't anger. You know,
I know it was a love affair. I just said it.
but I had to mention that because you kept saying phase, and I was like, yeah, but who did all the work? Stay High.
Amazing. Do we have, oh, there's one more question out there. Oh, sorry, yeah, we don't have movable
It's
mics.
okay.
Speak loudly.
Hi, my name is Armando. I also echo the gratitude to hear, living legends. I think it's such a privilege to hear that type of information. Gary, you touched on something also just before I raised my hand on how it created a sense of community. I think it caused, for me, my experience was I wouldn't have certain friends to this day that I didn't know about. My connection was one. My original question was, I wonder if Gordon, to create 2,000 images, it takes some time. So I wondered if he got to encounter any of the writers in that time period.
So it's interesting. All we have are the photographs, right? So, and I know Roger has looked through every single one. He does encounter kids, teenagers. I don't think he recognized anyone from them, though, right? But you could see that he was, he was having conversations with people and getting them to pose in some of the photos. But mostly, I do think he was just really interested in the art. It's just obsessive photo taking of the works.
She pointed out in one of the photographs in the back how the original photograph didn't have Gordon's name on it. One of those photographs Gordon tagged.
Yeah, that's true.
He put his own name up, so he was identifying with what we were doing.
And
It took his little moment in time to say, yeah, I got to put myself down on this.
And I just noticed it in this installation because that image, I think it's in one of these images, and I just saw, hold on a second, because there's a creep. Basically, he wrote creep, and it's not in the original image. And it's like, oh, what is that? Is that him? Yeah. So the one thing about, to understand about Gordon, he was not famous at all when he was alive. He was what was considered an artist, but he was we have interviews with him. His own writings are quite abstract, they're beautiful, but he didn't sit down and write an essay or a journal about what he was doing, right? So we don't have, with this body of work in particular, again, people thought it was really odd, right? He submitted some of these pieces to the Washington Square Art Show, and they were rejected as, being, this is vandalism, what are you doing? And so he set up his own protest art exhibition on the street 2 blocks away with these works, and then he took his truck to 105th Street, we think, because it was written on it. And yeah, he had connected with the community, or we were talking about maybe he just came out with a whole bunch of paint and said to people, go to town. But you can see those images, and it's, it's kids, it's adults. Everybody looks like they're having an amazing time, and he looks like he's having a great time. And they're covering the truck with graffiti. And so then he parked that truck next to his protest art exhibition, and he had his blowtorch, and as a way to kind of start conversation, he was cutting out pieces of the truck and engaging with people as they went by. But, he didn't show this work in a gallery except at 112 Green Street in a group show in 1973, where he showed one of the long photoglyphs like we have in the back room, and he hung it outside the back windows of the space, so it looked like there was a subway going by. But, nobody, and I've talked to friends of his and ex-girlfriends of his, and everyone when he was doing this was like, this was weird, we didn't get it. Like, he really was prescient seeing this as an art movement, because nobody else got it. So he made a ton of prints and works, and obviously took so many photos, but again, he had a short lifetime, and they never really got out there during his life. And then even subsequently, a lot of curators have had no idea what to do with them. So, it's amazing that I feel like this work has finally found its audience 50 years later.
I'm going to add to that because I have to give, shout out to Roger Gusman, who's the person who's been determined to keep this history, in the public, and then making that connection to Gordon's work, who was, part of this gallery in the inception, and bring it out, after more than 50 years, right? It's more than 50 years, so that people can see it and understand where graffiti comes from and how it has evolved, and all those artists who came out of graffiti who are, now, very successful artists. So I wanted to say thank you, Roger. I think we should give him a big round of applause.
So I want to say thanks to you guys for sharing the collection for Gordon and the family. It's nice to see something that has been basically hidden gems for the first time, and there's so much memories. There's so much history, there's so much culture in each of the photographs. So I appreciate seeing the collection. It is, it's nice to see stuff you don't get a chance to see often. So to see special glimpses like this is just magical. And I appreciate everybody who came out to appreciate it and take the time to learn about it, see it, and participate. And I'm glad to be here, so thank you guys for having me.
Thank all of you.
I want to say that it's a privilege to be part of the show, and I think that, I don't think, it's not to be shown. I'm going to say that this show needs to travel more.
Absolutely.
With other additional pieces.
I'm on tour.
That
Let's
you
do
guys
it.
have
World
discovered.
tour. Come on.
It's a privilege, I'm honored, and thank you very much to the gallery and to you, Jessamyn, your entire crew at the gallery. It's been one of the smoothest shows I ever participated in.
Thank you. Thank you.
Feedback. But thanks again, everybody, for coming. Thanks for tonight's amazing panel. Thanks to Jessamyn, Gordon Matta-Clark Estate, David Taverna Gallery for loaning the works, Roger for co-curating the exhibition. And join us again tomorrow night at 5 p.m. for the last panel of this series, Beauty in the Streets. And as we mentioned yesterday, this show is being extended till May 17th. And it's going to close with an event in collaboration with the Whitney Museum, which we'll be promoting starting next week. So hopefully we can all gather again on the final day of the show to close it out. But I agree the show should tour forever. Thank you very much. Have a great weekend, everyone.